All right, welcome everybody to this week's presentation of ARCHICAD out of the box. Today we're going to go over the very basics of ARCHICAD. So hopefully you're brand new to the software, and we're just going to talk about the basics of using it so that you can be the most productive you can be using it. So if you're expecting this to be about new features in 22, I'm not really going to cover those this time. It's just the basics of ARCHICAD itself. If you can hear my voice, don't worry about this slide. I'm just putting this up for a moment for those who might not be able to hear me. Um, and then we will proceed. I just want to make sure that those who might be having some sort of audio issues can address that on their own. All right, I think we can move on now. If you do have any questions, please look in your GoToWebinar control panel. There is a questions panel. Please type those there, and we will have a brief Q&A toward the end of today's presentation. Let's start off by just talking about what is ARCHICAD, because there are a lot of programs out there that do very specialized things, and with ARCHICAD, it does quite a few things. So as you can see on the screen here, it does everything from construction documentation to visualization, conceptual design, all the way down to those CDs, and as well as 3D modeling, 2D drafting. It's a very versatile tool. At the core of everything, though, ARCHICAD is a BIM tool, or Building Information Modeling, as I'm sure you've heard that term before. And the key thing about this is that you are creating a virtual model within the computer to simulate the actual construction in real life. And because of that, you can slice this model to get your drawings, your floor plans, sections, elevations, details, etc. And anytime you update the model, it changes everywhere amongst all of your drawings. So they're all coordinated. You can also share these models with other professionals to do collision detections if you're working with engineers or consultants. You can also share the model with clients on a very basic level if you just want to share the 3D model or just the drawings. There are ways to share precisely what you want with the intended party. Now, the one thing I do like to mention about ARCHICAD is that it is not, it can get quite complicated if you want it to. Otherwise, it can be very simple if you want it to be as well. It's building information modeling at either a basic level or a world-class, level, top notch. So it just depends on how you are going to make use of it. If you just want to be able to make nice drawings and get out a nice set for a custom residential design, you can definitely do that. All of the information kind of happens in the background. Or if you're working on a large scale project, multiple parties involved, ARCHICAD is able to embed that information into your project as well. And there are various ways to make use of that. If you'd like to learn more about general concepts or these topics, visit graphsoft.com. We have a lot of resources there. If you look under the Learning tab or on the home page, you'll see some of these. In fact, let me just pull up our home page for you right now so you can see what I mean. So if you just go to graphsoft.com and scroll down, you'll see trending news to learn about just the most recent topics and how ARCHICAD is being used in the field. You can also visit the Learning tab here. So if I click here, there are a number of seminars which are posted here. We also have some more specific learning materials on how to learn more about using ARCHICAD. And then one place I would recommend that you visit, let me go back to the home page. If you look on this banner and click on these click through these dots, we have a series called By Design, and this is a very informative series from architects in North America who are using ARCHICAD. Oh, it just skipped ahead of me, so let me click on that. And this is a video series. You can watch their experiences with using ARCHICAD, how it benefits their practices, so you can kind of get a real world feel for what ARCHICAD can do for you and your business. Okay, so again, just you can either visit graphsoft.com and just click that slide, or just go to graphsoft.com/bydesign, and that will take you to this page as well. But it's a very informative place to go. You can hear from experts using the tool, and it's actually quite inspiring to hear what some of them are doing with it. Lastly, with ARCHICAD, you can actually find resources within your help menu of ARCHICAD. So if you open up ARCHICAD and go to the help menu, there are some PDFs here. There are some specific links to websites that help with specific topics. And then right here is where I would focus for new users. There's an ARCHICAD online training module. If you click on this, it will open a little window that you can visit our education portal. If nothing else, I would encourage everyone who's just starting with ARCHICAD to check out the beginner ARCHICAD course and the intermediate. Both of these courses are going to cover a broad range of topics, including modeling, creating layouts, and publishing your document set so you know what to get out of it. So today's course is going to be just an hour. We're not going to be able to cover a lot, but these curriculum, these courses that we have inside of our help menu are definitely worth looking into. Beginner ARCHICAD, intermediate, and then if you want to go a little bit further, you can see what's new in ARCHICAD 22, learn about algorithmic design using Rhinoceros and Grasshopper, connect that with ARCHICAD. A little short tutorial if you just want to do a quick one. It's called Conceptual Design and Morph. And then ARCHICAD 21 introduced a lot of new features, so you can check those out as well. But yeah, so again, just to find that, ARCHICAD's help menu under ARCHICAD online training. Okay. For the remainder of the day, I'm just going to do, or remainder of our session, I'm just going to do a quick user interface. I am going to do a 1-minute exercise just to explain the power of ARCHICAD and how it is so powerful and how you can use that in your workflows. And then we're going to talk about working units a little bit because that's a common topic. I'll spend quite a bit of time with some basic tools such as the wall and slab tool because these are just core elements that are needed to create any architectural structure. So we'll spend most of the time there. And then we'll briefly touch on some specialty tools such as magic wands, guidelines, and then we'll just finish off with dimensioning because it's always important to measure and annotate your drawings. All right, so I'm actually in a copy of ARCHICAD right now with these slides. It's a bit of a gimmick, but actually, in reality, I use ARCHICAD for more than just architecture. I do use it to create graphics of all kinds. It's a very versatile tool, and it can be used for presentation purposes. If you want to sit down with your client, you can hop between a live model and a slideshow kind of PowerPoint presentation like I've just done. So, and just to let you see what it looks like once I turn all the tools on, now that might look a little bit more familiar to you if you've opened up ARCHICAD already. So what I'm going to do is hop over to another session of ARCHICAD that's running at the same time, which is also a nice feature of ARCHICAD. You can have multiple projects open simultaneously in case you need to copy and paste or work between two projects. When you first open ARCHICAD, you are greeted with this welcome page. This is just a worksheet. I can simply close out of this. I could even delete this. We have over here what's called our navigator, and I'll get to that in just a moment. But if you wanted to close out of that, you definitely can. So I'm just going to close that and visit our floor plan tab here on the left. Let's look at the interface real quick, just so that we understand the parts of it, and then we'll move on to other things. So obviously across the top of your menu, you will have across the top of your screen, you'll have the menus which pull down. The only reason I'm spending any time showing these is that they are organized by categories that are logical. So, for instance, we have our design tools and our document tools separated into two groups. But more importantly, what I find is most important with the menus are the keyboard shortcuts. Okay, so there are some very standard ones like Command S on a Mac is the standard command for save, obviously. But as you look through some of these other menus, you might find some specialty commands that you can have a keyboard shortcut for. I'm a very strong proponent of the keyboard shortcuts because I like to keep one hand on the mouse and one hand on the keyboard so that I can be as productive as possible. And knowing the keyboard shortcuts over time will help greatly. You can see a full list of keyboard shortcuts under Options, Work Environment, Keyboard Shortcuts. So if I go there, this might look a little complicated at first, but the only thing I want to highlight at the moment is this Show Shortcut List in Browser down here at the bottom. If I click that, it will open a full list of ARCHICAD's shortcuts in a browser page that I could then print or copy to another document. For your convenience, if you look in the GoToWebinar control panel under Handouts, I have created kind of a condensed one-page PDF of useful ARCHICAD shortcuts. These are the shortcuts I use day in, day out, and we find that those are most common. So if this list here on the screen that you see right now looks a little bit overwhelming, just go into the GoToWebinar control panel on your computer, click the Handouts panel to expand it, and then just click on the Useful ARCHICAD Shortcuts PDF. That will take you to a web page, and from there you can click Download. And that might help you learn the essential keyboard shortcuts that will help you with a few items rather than trying to digest all of this at once, because it can be a little bit overwhelming as you scroll down this full list. Okay, I'm going to close out of that work environment window. All right, so we've discussed the menus. Across the top of our ARCHICAD workspace is our title bar. Right now I'm working in an untitled document, just brand new. But when you save your document, the name of it will show up right here, just for reference. Below that, we have our standard toolbar, these little square icons that will basically give you an on-screen shortcut to certain tools. So for instance, right now I'm looking at the pickup parameter, inject parameter, which is a little eyedropper and syringe. I'll show you you can actually see the keyboard shortcuts showing up as I hover over those. But if I just wanted to use my mouse instead, I can click. Probably a very useful one is the pan command over here in the far upper left corner of the screen. We also have a few common drafting commands such as trim, split, adjust, intersect, etc. over here. And then to the far right, we have some palettes which are very useful in cases such as our favorite palette, renovation, etc. Now these toolbars are modifiable. You can customize them yourself. For a full list of toolbars, just look under the window menu and check toolbars. And you can see right now I only have the standard toolbar. You can find a list of specialized toolbars there as well. So that's just the window menu, toolbars, and then wherever you see a check mark next to something, that's the toolbar that's open. Now, the rest of the items that we see on the screen, aside from the workspace, are palettes. Palettes are more specialized to the need at hand. They're not you can't choose what is included or what's not as easily. You can customize those to some degree, but they're really designed to help you work in the program as efficiently as possible. So let's start with this palette on the far left of the screen called the Toolbox. Toolbox contains all of your standard tools to model, draft, and manipulate your project. You'll see if I hover over any of the icons here, it tells me what those are in case the icon's not entirely clear. Or if you actually just stretch this palette out a bit, you'll notice it gives you the option to just display the names. I can stretch it further and I can have a dual column with all the names showing. Or if I'm fairly familiar with the program, I can shrink that down until only icons are shown on the screen. Okay, and whenever I choose a tool from my toolbox, notice there's a bar above my workspace which displays settings that are relevant to that tool. In fact, as I click on a tool, notice the little icon right here on the left is the same icon as you see here in the toolbox. And so as I click on a tool, I may want to access certain settings. With this is called the info box, and with this info box, you can do a couple of things. You can access the settings that you see here. As you go further to the right, you'll notice it kind of cuts off. So if I scroll on my mouse, I can actually access more settings, okay? And that's to save some of your screen space, or you could potentially stretch that palette until it doubles or triples even. It's obviously going to affect your screen space below, but if you want to just be able to see everything at a glance and see what's there, you can just briefly stretch that down, look for the type of command you're looking for, and then you can put it back up to the top. And as I mentioned, you could just scroll side to side to find the full list of settings. Each tool also has a detailed settings dialog box. So I mentioned if I click on a tool here, I have an icon show up here. This icon is for that settings dialog. So if I click on the door tool, okay, this is going to show me my door settings dialog. Because this is an object-oriented element, you'll see I have a list of repositories. This is called a library. And the library contains a number of uh, elements with different configurations. So, you know, if I'm placing a door, I might want a single flush door, I might want a double door, I might want a door with transom and side lights, or just a single side light. So there are many variations here. And even within an individual door, you have a number of variations you can play with as well. So right now I have a double door selected. You can see the preview here, and I can change the width, the height. I can change the door leaf here, and I can change a whole number of settings. So um, even just a single door within, or a single object, I should say, within ARCHICAD has almost limitless variations for that, and you can configure these to become your office standards. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the info box as we go along. One other thing I'll just show you in the uh, toolbox is that if you look closely next to each icon, there is a little arrow that points to the right. And if I click that arrow, this is going to pull up a few predefined favorites, as we call them. Favorites are probably best suited for your office standards. As you develop your office standards, this list of favorites that you see here will reflect what you use on a daily basis for your projects. And that way, as you modify your template going forward, you'll be able to access your your commonly used elements all the time. And these are available for all of the different construction tools and elements within ARCHICAD. So you just need to click the little arrow just to the right edge of the icon here, and that will pull out this favorites palette. Then you just double click an element, and that becomes the um, active style. Style of the active favorite is the technical term, but it will use whatever you see here and those parameters. We'll get into that a little bit just as well. Across the top of our workspace, we see tabs like you would find in a web browser. And so if I want to move from my first floor plan to my 3D plan, I can just click once from one to the other. Obviously, we don't have anything constructed just yet, but we'll do that in a moment. And then to the far right, we have what is called the Navigator palette. And the Navigator palette is really one of the key components of ARCHICAD, how to be successful with it, how the downstream workflow works with ARCHICAD. So when I look here, I have these 4 buttons grouped together across the top, and I have this 5th button to the side. We won't focus on this one too much right now. The important thing are these 4 buttons grouped together because they do reflect the workflow in ARCHICAD. We have our project map, view map, layout book, and our publisher sets. And if you think of this as a downstream, you start at the project map level, and everything you want to have go to the publishing process, to the output, so to speak. So we'll talk a little bit more about this. I just wanted to show you here, if you want to open a new tab here in your workspace, let's say you want to open a section view, I can visit the sections area, double click it, and notice now that I do have a new tab on my screen. And so now I can easily access those different views just by clicking once up here. And if I'm done with a tab, I can simply hover over it, click the X, and make that go away. And then I can always revisit that by double clicking here again. So just this is going to help you navigate through the project as you're working. Okay. Lastly, down here at the bottom, this will take a little bit getting used to, but these are your view settings. So right here, I can see the scale of the project, and I can click this fly out, and I can choose a different scale if I wish. I can see my layer combinations, which we already give you a bunch of predefined combinations. We'll talk a little bit more about what that means as we go. And we have a number of other items. I don't want to dive too deep too soon, so I just want to give you a preview that these items down here will become important as you learn ARCHICAD, and learning to look down here and pay attention to what's there in terms of model view options, graphic overrides, renovation filters. This will help you to be able to use ARCHICAD more effectively. So for now, don't worry about understanding what each of these necessarily means right away, because there is a lot to digest in the program. Just understand it's a good idea to keep an eye on things down here and see what's changing and what's happening, and that will help you learn as we go. And I'm gonna cover this in a little bit of detail soon. I just want to point that out while we're doing our user interface tour. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is I'd just like to do a very short demonstration in ARCHICAD to kind of highlight the power of the program. Okay, because I've already spent so much time explaining things, but sometimes it's just easier to show rather than explain. So if you'll bear with me, I'm just going to take a few minutes, model up something very simple, because it's not it's difficult to model something extremely detailed within a small amount of time. But I'm just going to go ahead and model a small L-shaped building that's reminiscent of a residential home. So give me just a few moments, and this should just take me about 30 seconds to a minute, depending on how well I am at multitasking here, talking and modeling at the same time. But I'm just drawing in a group of walls here in an L-shaped configuration, okay? And as I draw anything in my floor plan, because this is a building information modeling program, if I visit 3D, you'll see that those elements are also being generated in the 3D window as well. And this is also going to start populating our sections and elevations as well. So I've drawn in a quick little footprint of a building. I'm now just going to go ahead and put in the floors. I'm going to pick a favorite this time for the floor. I'm just going to pick this wood floor, and I'm just going to create that floor. I'll explain what I did in just a few moments, but I've already created a floor. If we look in 3D, you can see that that floor is coming through. And then I'm going to just change a setting up here in my info box, and I will create a ceiling. And that ceiling is now created. If we go to 3D, you can see that there. Again, I will explain this in more detail as we go. Now I would like to put some entrances, so I'll just grab the door tool, and without making any changes, I'll just place a double door here, and actually I'll place a double door for the rear part of the building as well. Let me zoom in a little bit. We'll change that in just a moment. I don't think a double door is really suited for this project, but I want to show you how flexible it can be. This time I'm going to actually choose a favorite ahead of time. I'll choose this double hung window as my default for now, and I'll just place windows in the walls. Notice when I have the window tool active and the door tool, I just hover over a wall. I get a preview until I click, and then it asks me to click a second time just to define a swing. This might not apply to a double hung window, but if you have any windows that do have a swing to them, then you would want to define the swing by which quadrant you click in. But for now, I place those windows. Let's take a look in 3D. Okay. And finally, let's put a roof on this. Now, the default template does have multiple stories here in the navigators you see. So I'm going to kind of fudge this a little bit because I just want to create a single story building for now. So I'm not going to necessarily abide by how it's set up in the rule structure here, but that's okay. ARCHICAD is very flexible. So I'm just going to make a few changes to my setup here. I'm going to make sure that that roof abides on the second floor, and I do want to make sure I see a preview of the roof on the story below, which is our first floor. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that, and then I'm going to place a roof just like so. Okay, and just to make sure our building is not floating in space, I'm going to grab the mesh tool. Just draw a simple block for now. With your site or your terrain, you can get quite complex, but that would have to be for another presentation. So for now, I'm just going to create this simple block of terrain, which we call the mesh tool. Okay. So now if I visit my 3D window, here's how things are coming together at the moment. You can see we have our building sitting on the site. Maybe the site shouldn't come right up to the base of the wall, so I can actually drag that downward about 3 inches or so just to offset the bottom of the walls from that point so that it's not resting right on there. There's obviously a little bit of cleanup here. It's not the most attractive building, so let's do that right now. I'm going to go ahead and select my roof that I drew earlier. And I can come up to this info box and I can change the look of the roof a bit. So for instance, if I scroll over until I see a paintbrush icon, I can come over here and override some of these surfaces so they look a little nicer. So for instance, on the fascia, right now we're seeing part of the structure and the sheathing come through on that. So what I can do is come up here, click on my little paintbrush, and on the edge of the roof, I'll just enable the override, and it will paint it with whatever surface I choose. So I'll just for demonstration, I'll just change this to color red for just a moment. You can see it paints the entire edge red, or I'll change it back to a white color now, which would probably be better. And the roof obviously is not necessarily going to be white on such a building. So I'm going to go ahead and pop back over to the surfaces, the little paintbrush, and override the top part of the roof. And I'm just going to look through my existing list of materials and choose a shingle for that instead. So now you can see it's looking a little bit more like a typical home. And then for these walls here, I'm going to select all the walls at one time. Okay, and I'll do a very similar action here. Actually, let me try something new with this. I'm going to select all of the walls at one time, and I'm going to click that little arrow to the side of my wall tool that I showed you has the favorites, and I can pick from some of these existing elements. Now, if I look through here, I have a folder with exterior and interior. I'm just going to, even though it's not maybe the most appropriate, I'm just going to go with one of these interiors because it does have a siding element on it. Okay. Okay, so now you can see that I can change the siding, or even if I don't like that's still looking not quite to my taste for this building. We can pull out something called the surface painter palette. Okay, so I'm going to go a little bit quickly here, but I just want to show you we do have a number of palettes here, and now I can actually see. Oh, I didn't mean to dock that palette. Let me just drag it down again. There we go. Now you can see I've got a preview of various materials I can use here. So I can scroll down and look for maybe a siding or something that looks a little bit nicer. So if I don't necessarily see something I like in this list, it's easy enough to just click here to open the, or I'm sorry, click here on the paint. Oh, let's see. What am I doing here? 1 second. I was just trying to open the settings. There we go. I can open the surface settings here, and the surface settings will allow me to see more detail about each surface, but I can also find more surfaces that aren't loaded into my project yet. So if I wanted to have a brick finish, for example, I can come through and look at a variety of brick finishes which are not yet loaded into the project, but I can easily just pick one, click OK. All right, it's going to give me a little preview up here. I can click OK here, and now the palette will update with that brick. And here's what I've been wanting to do. I just click once here, and then I click on the surface, and notice what happens. It just paints that surface just like so. Very, very nice and easy. I'll just paint this side blue. And so this is kind of a fun little way to sit down with your client and play with different options. I mentioned earlier I don't like the way that door looks, so I can change that after the fact. I can do just like I did before with the wall, is click on the favorites panel, and let's say I want the front door to have this 6-panel entrance. I can change it, and you'll see it changes just like that. So the real key thing here is that everything in ARCHICAD is controlled by parameters, and you can modify them as you go. You're not having to build each component one little piece at a time. They're already scripted with a number of settings. And along with everything I've been doing in the floor plan and the 3D model, in the meantime, we've been generating other drawings as well, such as sections. Notice in this floor plan, I have some section markers cut through the building before it was even there. These are just kind of placed just as a default. You could actually delete these, or you can move them around if you like to adjust what you're going to see with those. But these section markers are generating a view within the model. If I look at this section, this is section marker number 2. So let's see, which section marker is that? If I look at it, oh, section building B. So this is section B. So if I double click section B, that shows me that view of that building and how it's coming along. Right now, I've just been kind of doing things very quickly for you. So, there's going to be a lot of cleanup that needs to happen, a little adjustment about, this placement of the slabs, things like that. But overall, things are coming along quite nicely. And so as we go and move down the line here on these 4 buttons I mentioned, I can get down to my layouts, and I can go ahead and preview, what is this going to look like on a printed page? Okay, so there's a floor plan. Now in this case, the walls are already preset to show a poche in there, all right, for schematic design. But you can see I have a number of drawings which are already sourced from that model. Now let's see. I guess I don't have anything on my 3rd or 4th story, so that's why that's coming in that way. But you can see that these drawings are already being generated from that quick little building I had made, and it applies the hatching effects that are relevant to a drawing. So that was that blue wall with no siding. And then here we should find the brick pattern as well. So it reflects properly on a printed sheet based on a set of rules. And this is kind of where the real power of ARCHICAD comes, is that you can work on the design, and if you have your template set up the way you want it to work, the way you like it, it will already start populating these drawings onto a sheet with your title block and your project information already there. I already have a set of sheets I could potentially print out in a preliminary stage, or put them out as various types of file formats. So if I wanted to send these out as PDFs, I can do that, or DWGs, or I can send those to the printer. If I'm collaborating with other professionals, I mentioned DWG already and PDF, I can also send them an IFC model, which is a BIM format, which is compatible with ARCHICAD, Revit, other BIM platforms out there, both architectural, structural, for MEP, etc. And then if I want to send something compelling to the client, I can export what is called a BIMX model. Okay, BIMX is a mobile app that you can open these models and these drawings on your iPad or iPhone or Android device. And if you haven't looked at that before, visit graphsoft.com and click on the BIMX tab and learn all about that. I'd love to show you everything in this short time that we have, but it's hard to do so. ARCHICAD is such a versatile tool. So the real power I'm trying to get out, though, is that all of these items are ready to output some sort of content. So in a real world scenario, you might have a design competition, or someone sends something out for bid, or someone just ask for a proposal. You could spend maybe a few hours working inside of ARCHICAD and develop something much more complicated than what I have here, and much more elegant. But in that 4 hours, if the template is set up the way you like it to work, you can have your doc set ready to go. You can send out those preliminary PDFs. You can include marketing materials in your PDFs. as well as 3D visualizations, like you can see from our 3D window here. You can generate either these live views, or we also have a built-in photo rendering engine from Cinema 4D, which is a leading graphic visualization software package. We were sister companies with them, and so we have their world-class rendering tools right within our palettes. You'll just go to photo rendering settings. You can come in here and pick from a variety of presets. So if I choose this general purpose outdoor and get a preview up here, this will do kind of a preview rendering before I do the real thing, because the real thing would take a few minutes to complete entirely. But we do have all of that. So the point is that you are going to be able to create a lot of different content from just a little bit of work. And for me, it's fun, actually. So, all right, now we've reached about 11:40, so I'm going to jump over to the wall tool and spend a little bit more time with that and the slab tool, and then we'll get along on this presentation. So thus far, I've drawn this little building for you. I'm just going to scoot off to the side into this empty space, and let's draw a few things. I'm going to grab the wall tool, and I'm going to show you the basically what it takes to draw a wall. So you've probably already been experimenting with ARCICAD, I'm sure, and maybe some of this is just very intuitive already. But sometimes, just knowing little tricks can help. So when you click to draw anything in ARCICAD, it's just like putting a pencil down. So I click once to put the pencil down, and then I just drag my cursor, okay, and I'm stretching an element. And then to finalize the placement of that element, I can either click again, which if I do, I get a wall here, but it's at an indiscriminate length. It's, if I put a dimension down on this, you can see I've got a wall now at this length here. And so what I prefer to do is this. If I grab my wall tool, click a point, and drag, you'll see I get this little blue guideline to help me find the horizontal. I'll click and drag in a given direction, but then I'll just start typing a distance. So if I want a wall that's 12'5", 12.5 feet, I'll just type in 12.5 as one way to do that. And notice what happens is that now if I place a dimension on this one, I get a precise distance. Now I could just take this wall over here, stretch it out, and sync it to that. And now, well, let's see. They didn't start at exactly the same point, so I need to. There we go. Now I can get both walls to precisely that. But it's much easier to type in the distances as you go rather than trying to click and do precisely. Now you can click and get more precision. You just need to go up here and enable the snap grids to do that. So if you're the kind of person that would rather just click point to point to point to get precise elements, you can turn on your snap grid. So you can come in here, we can actually turn on the grid display so you can see how that works. And if I grab the wall tool now, I can click from point to point, and these grids are spaced 4 feet apart. So if I were to do a dimension on this, it should tell me it's 8 feet. Yeah, 8 feet long. So there are multiple ways to do it. I think the easiest way is to leave the snap grids off and just draw and enter your distances manually as you go. And ARCICAD will adapt to different formats. Now, the USA version defaults to imperial, so feet and fractional inches. So if I type in 12, like I did before, I'll just type in 12, then I get a 12-foot wall. If I wanted to use inches, I could type in 144. I just have to make sure to put the inch mark there. Okay, and that will give me a 12-foot wall as well. And here's even faster than using the inch mark. Type in 144 slash. Slash, the little forward slash, the question mark. That is just a quicker way to do it because you only have to use one finger. You don't have to do shift apostrophe to get the inch marks. So you just press 144 slash enter. Then you can get your inches a little bit faster than having to do shift apostrophe. Now, some people would rather default to inches by default. If you're working on cabinetry or millwork, and inches makes more sense to use, you can always go to the options, work environment, I'm sorry, options, project preferences, working units. Okay, the working units are what control the default here. So we have length, area, volume, angle, etc. And so I will come up here. I could choose decimal feet, I could choose fractional inches, or metric as well. So I'll change this to fractional inches, and this time if I start drawing a wall and type in 12, enter, without any annotation after it, then it's just going to default to 12 inches. Okay. So options, project preferences, working units. And you just set your length unit up here, or if you want to measure areas in different units or volume, angles, etc. Let's talk about a few more things with the wall. So I'm just going to delete those elements. I'm going to go back to my wall tool. Up here, we have our geometry methods, okay? And there's 4 icons here. One is for straight walls, circular or arced walls, trapezoidal walls, which are basically, they start off at one thickness and end at a different thickness. And then we have our polygonal wall method, which is really for those irregular situations. If you ever come across a renovation of an older building, you might find that the walls are very strange, and you might need to model a very specific condition. Or you might come across a condition you're trying to model from scratch that does require you to do a very kind of unique kind of wall. So that's what that's for. But for now, let's stick with the straight walls and the curved walls. If you click and hold your mouse on this geometry method, it gives you even more options. So let's start with the straight wall. We have these 4 items showing up below if I hold my mouse. If I let go on this first one, when I click 2 points or just type in 12, enter, then it's done, right? And now I have to basically click again to start the command again. So then I can click on this corner of the wall and type downward and just type in 4. And you can see the walls clean up where they were touching, but it finishes the command. Then I have to click to start. And if I want to line it up with this, I just hold my shift key and I can get that 3rd wall. And then I can click again to start and click here to join, and that cleans up nicely. The only problem is it took a while for me to do that because I have to draw each wall one at a time. That is great if you're doing interior partitions. I would suggest a single wall. Usually if you're drawing multiple walls at one time and you're trying to lay things out quickly though, you might want a quicker method than that. So let me just erase this. Go back to the wall tool, change this method to the next item, which is the chained method, okay? And now if I click and then I type in 12, enter, but then I drag my cursor away, notice it's still going, okay? So now I can just type in 4 feet like I did before. I can drag it over here. Because it's a chain of walls, it's already referencing back to its starting point, so I don't even need to hold shift. I just click on that point and finish it out. Very quick. And this can be any shape too. It doesn't need to be just a rectangle. It can be any set of shape of walls, like my L-shaped building I did before, whatnot. There's really not a limit in how I do that, and it doesn't necessarily need to be orthogonal. And anytime I overlap walls with other walls, there will be cleanup at the intersections. Here's a little trick for a situation like this. If I wanted to clean out these walls in the middle, I just hold my command key on a Mac or control key on Windows. As long as I don't have anything selected, I just hold that command key. Notice the icon turns to little scissors, and then I can click these little segments out of there. In fact, I can keep doing that if I want to, remove segments from those walls as well. Just a little trick along the way. I can also edit these walls now that they've been placed. This little palette that pops up in the middle of the screen, we call this the Pet Palette. Pet Palette brings up common editing commands related to whatever you clicked on. So I clicked on the face of a wall. Gives me some options to either enter a new point in that wall or to curve the edge. So let me just click the curve edge option. I can curve that edge like so. This pet palette comes in really handy, and the way it works is you select an element. I'm selecting by just simply holding the shift key and then clicking on an element. See, it gets highlighted. And then depending on if I click on this end point here I get a pet palette with certain options, or if I hit escape and click on the face of the wall, notice my pet palette options change a little bit. But I'm just going to keep curving walls like that, just so you can see what that's like. If I have a junction of two walls, I can select them both at the same time and drag the common point to a different location, and they both modify at the same time. So there's a lot of fun little factors with inside of ArchiCAD that make the design process pleasurable. So it's not just a tedious goal of drawing each thing line by line by line, and when you have to make a change, you have to undo it all and start over again. With ArchiCAD, it's very flexible with any kind of change that comes along. And we've been in the floor plan for a while, so I'll just pop into 3D and we'll just highlight what this is looking like at the moment too, just for fun. All right, and let's see what else we want to talk about. Oh, we want to show you also, just to finish out the straight walls, there is also just the rectangular method. So if you just need to draw a set of 4 walls very quickly, obviously the quickest way to do this is to draw a box. And so you just type in your dimensions for that box. I'll say 12 foot by 8 foot. So I just type in 12. And if you look down here where this is called the tracker is, I've already typed in 12 for dimension 1. That's the horizontal. And then if I hit the tab key, I can hop down to the next dimension, the vertical, and type in 8. And then I just press enter when I'm done. And so then I've created a set of walls that are 12 by 8. Now here's another thing that's interesting. Notice I dimension to the outside of the walls, and that's where I'm getting my 12 by 8. Well, you might want to have that 12 by 8 dimension to the center of the walls, right? Or to the interior. So how do I account for that? How do I make sure that it's 12 by 8 on center instead of 12 by 8 on the outside face? Well, I'll show you real quick. Actually, we can just leave what we've got right here. I don't need to delete it. Notice when I select this wall, it highlights most of the wall in green, but this box on the outside is blue, right? This bold blue line has these little dots in the corners. This is what we call the reference line, okay? So you obviously have to click your mouse on a single point inside of ArchiCAD, inside of a floor plan in general, to define the corners or the points that you want to pick. And that's what this reference line is. Right now, the reference line is defined as the outside face. And you can see that up here in the info box. If I just come up here and toggle this to center, voila. The overall dimension of the box I drew has not changed. However, it's now recognizing that the points I clicked should represent the center line, not the outside face. And I could come up here and change this to inside face, and same thing. Now it's still dimensioning 12 by 8, but it's referencing the inside face of the wall. So you just have to decide what works for you as you're drawing. Here's a little keyboard shortcut. If you tap the C key, so C as in cat, C as in center, C as in construction, it will toggle through those reference line locations. This used to be called construction method. I think that's why the C key is still in use, but the C key will tap through the reference line options. Okay, and you can actually do that as you draw. So as I'm drawing, let me draw a set of chain walls. If I'm drawing and then all of a sudden I've created 3 walls and I say, oh shoot, I didn't mean to be drawing this on face, I want it to be on center, I tap the C key as I'm drawing, and notice I can toggle through, and I haven't even finished drawing my walls, it just toggles through so that by the time I do click and finish that out, notice that blue line as I select the walls is right down the middle. Okay. We're running a little bit low on time. Sorry, I'm spending a good deal of time on these topics, but you can also draw circular walls, or if you just want to draw an arc, you can. You just define the arc angle. If you just want to draw a little segment that's curved, I generally stick with the straight walls because you can always curve those after the fact, like I just showed you before. But you do have these different geometry methods. Here's another keyboard shortcut you might want to keep handy. If you want to toggle through those geometry methods, just tap the G key for geometry, G. Notice as I tap the G key on my keyboard, right up here, these options are toggling through. So if I accidentally start with say a rectangular box, but I want to do just a single straight wall, I can tap through G until I get there. I can also go backwards just by tapping Shift G. Shift G, it'll go backwards. All right, we spent a bit of time with the wall tool. Let's hop to the slab tool and then we'll start wrapping this up. So the slab tool, I love the slab tool because it's got this ugly name, slab, right? Whenever we think of slabs, we think of cold, hard concrete slabs. And really, inside of ARCHICAD, don't let the name of any of the tools kind of box you into what they can do or what they're for. So sometimes people ask us, why doesn't ARCHICAD have a floor tool? Why doesn't ARCHICAD have a ceiling tool? Well, that's because we have a slab tool, and the slab tool can do both. Pretty much the slab tool is for anything that's kind of flat in nature. So I'm going to go ahead and just draw in, a typical box. So we're going to start with kind of the preconception of what a slab might actually be. In fact, let me simplify it even more before we get started. Okay, there we go. That looks like a slab, right? Kind of cold, and you don't know, it's just, I don't know. It kind of personifies that word slab. And I think the only reason they chose the word slab is because it was a short word that could kind of get this idea across of something flat. But you can do a whole lot of things with the slab tool. First of all, I want to show you how you can cut a hole in this. Now, I've been spending a lot of time in 2D. I'm going to spend some time in 3D doing this. You can do a lot of these operations in 2D as well. I'm going to select this slab. Oh, do I have some of it cut off here? Let's go back. I might have a marquee turned on somewhere. There we go. Now it's showing the whole thing. Okay, so let's play around with this and see what is possible with a very simple element like a slab. Okay, so first of all, one thing you can do with slabs, roofs, shells, fills, what else? I think morphs as well is draw holes in them. So let me draw a hole in this slab, and here's the order of operation. You draw a slab, you select it so it's still selected, okay? And a key thing here is you need to have the slab tool still active. It is possible for me to switch over the arrow tool, and inside the workspace nothing changes, but now my trick isn't going to work. So you have to have the tool active while you have the element selected, and then you just draw a slab inside of another slab, and it automatically subtracts that space out. Okay, this is going to be great for when you're doing your multi-story buildings and you need to have your opening in the floor above for the stairs. And you can reshape this. It doesn't necessarily need to be a square rectangle. I mean, just like I showed you earlier, this little pet palette kind of helps you modify that shape and make it whatever you want it to be. If I wanted to have this curved, I could make it all sorts of shapes. Okay, and also, the material of the slab can be anything you want it to be. Let me just undo a little bit. One of the things I like to show real quick that you can do with the slab tool, it's easy to show in a short amount of time, is I can come up here, I can choose a different kind of material from the list, such as water, and I can actually draw a slab within there, and now I've got a very simple reflecting pool that I can put in the backyard or front yard as a water feature inside of my model. So that's something very simple. I can change the material of this to any of these materials here and beyond. You can design your own materials, but let's just change this to, say, a wood, pressure treated wood. And then I can also come up here and change the complexity of that slab to something that has multiple components to it. So right here, here's a wood floor. It has the finished floor on top. Below that is the subflooring. Here's the floor joist. And then if we look below, there's the gypboard for the ceiling below, on the floor below. And again, like we did with the roof, we can make it so that we don't see the structure on the edges. We've got that same little paintbrush icon here where we can, paint it white just around the edges, make it look nice so that that structure only shows up in our section and our construction drawings, but in the visualization it looks right. We can do a whole lot more with the slab. Let me just do a very quick demonstration. I'm going to delete this one. I'm going to grab my slab tool. I'm going to draw in a slab that is a 3 by 6'8". Okay, That's about the dimensions of a door, right? Okay, so here we're starting with slab. I left it on water by mistake, so let me just change that to something else. In fact, let me see if I can find kind of a wood material that hopefully will be good enough for this. Let's see. Oh, you know what? I didn't have it selected. Okay, let's do the wood millwork. There we go. Okay, so now we have a wood material. We need to change the thickness of this slab, obviously, because the door that's too thick for a door. 11 foot or 11 inches and an eighth. No, let's do 1 3/4. Okay, and let me just be for best practices. I'm going to raise the slab 1 3/4 up so that it's resting right at 0 level. So that's all I did there. So now we have something that looks more like a door leaf, right? Well, what if we want to customize something a little bit here? Well, what I can do is select that slab. I showed you the trick earlier how to draw holes inside of slabs, right? You select the slab with the slab tool active over here. You just draw slabs on top of the existing slab and it creates a hole. I could start out, or let's see, I could extend a slab to the edge and it would actually cut a hole to the edge, but we don't want to do that with this door per se. Okay, so now I've got this element here. Now I just need to put some glass in those openings. So then I grab my slab tool here, and I'm going to just create a new slab right there. But again, I need to change some parameters with that. I need to change the material first of all to, let's find some glass here. Oh, let's see. Where do we have our glass at? I'm sorry. I'm still getting used to the new template that we have here. So glass clear. There we go. I'll make that my default. And then I need to make that glass the right thickness. So I'm just going to make it 1/4 of an inch in this case. And we want that glass to set inside of there a little bit. So I'm going to raise it up, about 1 inch from where it was. So now that, whoops, now that glass is sitting nicely within that space. Not getting down to fabrication level, but just to kind of give you an idea. So let me just place similar slabs now in those 4 openings. Oh, you know what? I need to raise those up though. I'll just drag way far and then I'll just type in 1 inch. That way I know for sure I'm dragging vertical. Oh, see, it didn't work. Let me try it again. Vertically along this line, then type 1 inch. There we go. Now all those glass panes are inset within the door leaf. And what I can do now is select this entire configuration. There's a little trick inside of ARCICAD. You just go to File, Libraries, and Objects, Save Selection As, and I can just save this as a custom door leaf. Okay, so I'll go ahead and do that right now. Save as custom door leaf. I kind of constructed this like a carpenter would, just laying flat on the ground rather than vertically. So it's just asking me, do I really want to use the horizontal plane? Yes, I do, because that's how I did it. You can go ahead and give it a name. I don't have any other custom components here. That's why the dialogues are empty, but I'll just call it Nix Custom Door. Okay, and I'll save that. And it's going to pop up with a little dialogue that says this is now available. Click OK. And what that does for me is when I now open my door tool settings, if I were to pick a single door or a double door, I can look through the list of door panels. And if I come down to custom door leaf, let me turn the preview. You can see it's already populated with my custom door leaf. And the cool thing about it too is because I made a door leaf instead of just a single door, I can go to any of these other doors, such as this D2 sidelight transom, and do exactly the same thing. Go down to my custom door leaf, and it'll populate with that door leaf that I created. Now, you could get much more creative than I was. I just didn't have a lot of time to do it. So that's why I did something simple like that. But you can kind of see the power of that, and I can reuse that in my projects over and over again. So again, the whole idea is don't let the name of a tool over here fool you. They can do quite a few things. If you can use roof tools to create any kind of sloped element that you need to make, including ramps or driveways or just about anything that has a slope to it. Walls can be used for a variety of elements. I've seen people create roads with walls, and people have created trim with walls. And so don't necessarily let the names fool you here. You can use a lot of these elements for a lot of different things. They don't need to be restricted to what they're named. I've sorry, I've gone a little bit long here. I understand that if anyone needs to leave, your time is valuable, and I totally appreciate that, and I appreciate you coming. If you do need to leave at the moment, this is being recorded. We'll send you a recording of the webinar afterwards. So if you need to leave, you will get a recording. Thank you for your time. If you can stay around, I'll just finish out a few other topics, and then we'll wrap up in the next few minutes. Okay? Thank you very much. All right, so I'm going to show you one other thing that's a signature to ARCHICAD, which is the Magic Wand tool. So, my first little attempt over here, again, was just an L-shaped building, but that was just because of the necessity of time. I didn't have a lot of time to do much with it. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to draw in some very simple shapes with just some 2D tools. So I'm going to use my polyline tool. And let me just, I just want to keep that building in the corner of my eye so I can get a sense of scale. Let's say I have a building that has a few more twists and turns, just like they would in the real world. Okay, so I'm just kind of doing this on the fly, but just kind of giving something with a little bit more complexity. Okay, there we go. And just for fun, let's just curve one of those walls inward. So let's just say this is the floor plate of a building. And let's say that this is a piece of line work I imported from a DWG or a PDF. I can import vectorial information from multiple sources, and I can reuse that. So let's say I had a DWG, I pulled it into ARCHICAD, I isolated the floor plate layer, and now I just have the outer boundary of the building shown right here. I can reuse this geometry. I can just snap to it if I want to. If I want to start snapping walls one at a time from corner to corner, no problem. I snap to the line work that's already there, but it can be a little tedious as you go along. It would be much nicer if we could just reuse this shape that we have in front of us, right? Well, you can do that with ARCHICAD. You just use what we call the Magic Wand tool. So let me just make sure my wall tool is set to something appropriate. So I'm just going to open the settings for now. Let's see, do I have something selected? No. Okay. Trying to figure out why my wall tool is locking me out. Oh, because I have the polygonal method. That's why. Okay, so change it over to straight walls. There we go. I'm going to find a favorite here. We'll just use this CMU for now. Okay, so I'm going to choose the CMU, and what I'm going to do, rather than tracing that entire shape right here, I can just hold down my space bar, and look what happens. It actually gives me a preview before I do anything. I just hold my space bar inside the shape. You can see around the perimeter of that shape what I'm going to get, right? And again, I can change it so that that's the center line, not necessarily the face. But if I just space bar and then click, voila, here we have it. So let me go to 3D, and I've already got the footprint of my building drawn, at least the walls. So if this were a set of foundations, I could do that, and then I could draw the structure on top of that. I can also do the same thing with my roof tool. I hover over the shape of that I have drawn there, space click. It even accounts for this kind of funky curve, and then it adapts the roof planes to the pitch. So the pitch of the roof is 6 inches over 12. So it tries to get every single face to adapt to that shape. You could always go in and modify that later, but you can see that it tries to make life a little bit easier by taking the given parameters and drawing that for you. And if I wanted to have it have shingles, I can just borrow the settings from that roof over there. But you can see how designing an ARCHICAD, first of all, can be fun, but it can also be very efficient and quick because you probably already have a set of documents and drawings in your portfolio that you might be able to reuse in some fashion or another. And then you can use ARCHICAD to edit that and change that and bring this down to construction document level. So that's the space click. It basically works for any, let's talk about which tools it will work for. It'll work for the wall tool, it will work for the slab tool, railing, roof, the shell, and curtain walls, and morph, and mesh. Okay, so it doesn't work for an object because a door is a door. You don't create a door that's, I mean, by default you don't anyway. You don't create a door that's twisted and strange and in this shape that you see right here. But a lot of elements that you're going to define by drawing yourself, those are the items that you can use the spacebar, click, or the magic wand tool with. If you prefer to find these things in the menu, the magic wand tool is also found under the design menu. So outline, polygon with magic wand. Otherwise, you just hold down the space bar to do that. Okay, real quick, let's throw down some dimensions onto some of this work that I've done here. So let me grab my dimension tool. To dimension, you saw me do it earlier. Pretty simple. You click once on all the points you wish to have be part of your dimension string. Okay, you get these little bullseyes on each point that you click on, right? And then to tell ArchiCAD you're done clicking points, you double click, okay? And I can either tell it I want a dimension off to the side here or I want a dimension above the building. So I'll just drag upwards and that will list my dimensions between those particular points, okay? And then if I were to say I want to even this out so it's not 21/64, I can grab another tool here called my marquee tool, and I can drag this entire end of the building in 21/64. Now we should have a nice round number here, 23 feet. So the dimensions are associative. They adjust with the elements that they're associated to. Very quick and easy to dimension elements. You just kind of have to know that trick. I kind of treat it like a waltz. You know, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Well, with the dimension, you go click. Well, it's a bit of a different step, but click, click, double click, and place. Click, click, double click, and place. So if you click, click, double click, and place, hopefully if you remember that little mantra, that'll help you remember how to place dimensions. Click, click, double click, and place. So that's just a little mantra I've had in my head to help me learn how to dimension ArchiCAD. Let's see, I think there was one other item on our agenda, I think maybe we covered it all. Oh, guidelines. Yeah, let me just touch on guidelines real quick. So in ArchiCAD, when you're drawing, you probably noticed whenever I was drawing walls, I get this little blue dashed line that kind of fades out, fades in as I get closer to horizontal. This is called a snap guide. Snap guides are temporary, they're blue, and they just help you find those things in the moment. So if I need to find the perfect horizontal, and if I get within a few pixels of that snap guide, that's going to give me the perfect 0 angle, as you can see there in my tracker right by my mouse, angle 0, 0. So that helps me get the horizontal or the vertical or the 45-degree angles, okay? So anytime I'm on a horizontal, vertical, or one of the 45-degree angles around the coordinate system, it's going to give me that little snap guide. I can actually customize that to be even more granular if I want to have a snap guide every 10 degrees or every 5 degrees. But the snap guides are just there to help you. And they actually help with existing elements too. So if I hover my cursor over the face of this wall for just about a second, do you see that kind of Luke Skywalker lightsaber effect? Watch what happens there. In fact, yeah, you can see it kind of, I'm going to hit escape. I'm going to zoom out. It might be easier to see if I'm zoomed out. I'll pick a long wall here like this one here. See that lightsaber effect? Now, if I drag my cursor off to the side, it acts just like a tape measure and it extends from this wall. So if I needed to draw another element that aligns perfectly with that face of that wall over there, I can do that. So I can hover over faces of elements for just about a second until I see the blue highlight appear. If I want that blue highlight to disappear, I can either hit escape or I just move my cursor and then move it right back over it and it disappears. Or I can hover over points, like the corner of this building, and I get a little circle. Okay, the circle indicates that, hey, I'm going to reference from this point. Do I want to go this direction? Do I want to go on an angle? You know, here's even an angle bisector that it determines between the 45 and the 90. Do I want to get something projected off there? So it's just kind of a helpful little way to use reference points. And then I can make that go away just by hovering my cursor over it again. And here's the expert trick. If you tap the letter Q, it automatically creates one of those instantly, or If I tap the letter Q again, it makes it go away. Tap Q on the corner, it appears. Tap Q on the corner, it goes away. Do you see that? So tap Q, 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 Q. So, because sometimes you could potentially get a number of these on accident, or maybe you set them up, but then you realize, oh, this is getting a little noisy with all this visual feedback as I go. So you can always hit escape, and that makes all of them disappear. Now if you want permanent guidelines that aren't going to disappear when you hit escape or when you finish a command, on the edges of the screen we have these little orange tabs here. These are for orthogonal construction lines. I can snap those to elements, okay? I can bring on as many as I want. I just need to visit the edge of the screen, drag them to where I need them to be. And now these orange guidelines do not disappear on the fly. They are semi-permanent. They won't actually print in my document, but they're there for me to align elements and snap to them. I can even draw my own custom ones by coming up to this little triangle icon and clicking the little option arrow down next to it and choose create guideline segment. So if I do need a 45-degree line at 40, at a length of 40 feet, I can create those. And I can create as many as I want, and I can, oops, let me go back to that create guideline segment, or I can use Shift L as the keyboard shortcut, as you can see there. I can create as many of these guidelines as I want, just so I have reference points to snap to, or reference lines to snap to. And then when I'm done with these, well, first of all, if I hover over them, I get this little orange grip. I can drag those around if needed, move them if I like. But if I don't want that guideline anymore, I right-click and I choose remove guideline. Or right-click and remove all guidelines, and then they go away completely. Now, some people have asked, how do I keep a set of guidelines and then just hide them and show them, and I really don't want to ever delete them unless I'm really sure? Well, you can always create a layer with inside of ARCHICAD and set your line tool to a dashed line type, and we can even choose kind of an orange color, and you can create a layer of your own stylized guidelines that you have here. Now this line, it's a typical line. I don't really have a right-click option to just delete the line. I have the general delete command, of course. But the nice thing about this is that I could just hide this layer, and it will be out of sight. And whenever I want to pull that back in, I just go and find that layer and turn it back on, and it's there. So it depends on how permanent you want to have your guidelines be. And I could also actually print this guideline too. So we go from the snap guides, the blue ones, which are kind of really temporary, to the orange guidelines that are semi-permanent. And then we move off to just using regular lines if you want to have something that is permanent, that you can turn on and off, that you can refer to over and over and over again throughout your project. That's probably the way to go, is just create those with the line tool. Okay, well, I'm sorry for going long. With 22, we're having to adjust our format a little bit, so we're still working out timing on that, so my apologies. But let's see if you have any questions. If you need any help beyond today, again, there's the help menu inside of ARCHICAD that you can visit and choose ARCHICAD Online Training. We also have our ARCHICAD Talk website, which is where other users go. And if you visit that website, there's tons of advice, tons and tons of advice about how to use ARCHICAD. In fact, I'm just going to go there real quickly and just show you where I would point you to as a beginner, if you are a beginner, which is go to the ARCHICAD Talk site and just scroll down to Working in ARCHICAD. You can see there's over 15,000 topics there, over almost 90,000 posts completely. And you can just go in there and kind of see what people are talking about. They might be asking, how do I do that? How do I do this? I'm having a problem with something. How do I fix that? How do I accomplish a certain kind of design issue inside of ARCHICAD? And so that's a great place to go for that. All right, so and then also you could visit graphisoft.com, our main website. Okay, and from there, if you're interested in reaching out to someone locally, it's under the purchase tab. I don't want you to make you feel like you're obligated to purchase, but the good thing about this page is that you can just type in a zip code. All right. Or if you're in Canada, just choose your province, or if you're in the Caribbean, it's down here. And then you just hit search, and this will give you a phone number and an email address of someone you can reach. That they're going to be the ones that are going to really give you the attention that you want when you have those specific questions. So if I don't answer your question today, just go to graphsoft.com. That purchase tab just allows you to search throughout all of North America for a local contact. Okay. I'm going to see what we've got in the Q&A, and we'll go from there. Okay, so first question is, when I was showing libraries, there was let's see, on your copy, you're not seeing BIM Cloud libraries because you have the solo version. Yes, that is true, because the full version of ARCHICAD has three primary differences from solo. The full version of ARCHICAD allows you to collaborate in a single file simultaneously with other ARCHICAD users. We call this teamwork. Okay, and teamwork is facilitated by BIM Cloud. BIM Cloud is the actual name of the software module that facilitates teamwork. So I think what you were talking about, if I just go into the library manager, um, maybe if you were looking, I think you were talking about when I was inside of an object or a door. If I look inside the object tool, yes, right here I have BIM Cloud libraries. So right now I don't actually have any loaded. It's just got the header there. If this was a teamwork project, I would see a list of libraries here. But yes, if you're using the solo version of ArchiCAD, BIM Cloud is not an option with that. And so you wouldn't see BIM Cloud. But essentially all that means is that if I was in a teamwork project and using BIM Cloud to collaborate simultaneously on a project, then I would have all of my libraries on that BIM Cloud installation. But for now, everything is under linked libraries. In fact, right now I'm just doing a solo project inside of the full version of ArchiCAD. So in that sense, I just have the same style of libraries that you would have inside of Solo, which are the linked libraries. Linked libraries are sourced from your local installation of ArchiCAD. So you can see right here, it says location. It's just coming from my applications folder under the ArchiCAD library, or under the ArchiCAD 22 folder. I could even click here as a convenience to see where that actually is inside of my computer. Okay, let's take a look at some other questions. What allows you to draw a wall at varying angles? My defaulted to 0 angle. So if you have the snap grids enabled, then it's going to restrict your angles a bit by its very nature that it's snapping to a grid. Now in my case, mine might be loose enough that I'm able to, associate along those various angles. Depending on the settings you have in your snap grid, it might be set in such a way that you have a very limited range. Like for instance, the closer I get, and let me turn my snap grid on so I can see it, the construction grid. The closer I get, the harder it is going to be. I won't be able to actually. Well, let's see. What am I doing differently now? Let me turn that on. Oh, snap to. There we go. I didn't actually have it turned on. Yeah. So as I draw, notice I can't even draw a wall that's 2 feet in length. It's actually going to snap from one point to another. Now, if I adapt this a little bit, snap to snap grid, it will allow me to go. And you notice it now snaps at more refined increments. It snaps every inch or so. I get a snap point. So this might be a way you can snap from point to point and get much more precise measurements without getting those crazy 64ths of an inch kind of lengths. So this wall was 3'2", and that's just by using snap grid. So I'm thinking that might be it. Another thing that will restrict you from getting angles, if you are feeling restricted, is that if you hold the shift key in the horizontal or the vertical, then you're locked in as long as you hold that shift key. You're holding that shift key, I can move my cursor all over the place, but it's only going to go up and down, or side to side, or if I happen to snap it on the 45, it's only going to go along that 45-degree angle. So maybe that's what's happening. I think that there are a lot of conditions which could lead to that, so probably just would need to, look specifically at what's going on there. How am I selecting objects to erase? So we do have the arrow tool here in our toolbox. If I come up here and continuously click here, I can come back, just click on elements, click delete. What I find easier that I was doing more regularly is that I can be on any kind of tool over here, not necessarily the arrow tool. If I hold my shift key while I have my cursor over elements, as long as I don't have anything selected. So I don't have anything selected right now. I hold down the shift key. Notice my cursor changes to the arrow tool, and then I can start selecting elements on the fly. And if I wanted to, I could click delete at this point, and it's going to delete those two walls and the roof that I just selected. So shift click is going to be your best friend when you're getting started and down the road. Okay, it looks like the last question said the last questions were answered. So, all right, I think we'll end it there. I will close this meeting out, and you will get a copy of the recording sent to you. I would like to say thank you for all attending. Appreciate your time. Hopefully, you'll join the ARCHICAD community. We are kind of a tight-knit group, and everybody's a passionate user that we come across. So hopefully, you can become one of those and be part of our community, and we can help you have fun designing and find efficiency as well. A lot of our ARCAD users say, they can compete against much larger firms because they have all these efficiency tools. We've heard some people say, we're a 5-person shop, but we're competing against firms that have 20, 30, 40 people just because they learn to use these tools efficiently enough, and they can go up against those types of firms consistently. In fact, as just one final parting word, I would say, is definitely go to graphisoft.com/by-design, or you can just Google, Graphisoft by design. But that's going to take you to this page where you can see these testimonials from these users. I interact with a lot of these users myself, being in tech support, and so I know them, and they do awesome work, and it's just fun to see them show what they can do with it and how it's changed their practice. So I'll just say that that's where you should go next, is by design. Just do a little Google search, Graphisoft by design, and you'll be able to see this series. There's a number of episodes to go through, highlighting different types of firms across all of North America. All right. So thank you very much. I hope you have a great weekend.